Hello and welcome to my Yugioh channel. Today we're going to be looking at the super rares in the Duel Links pack, which is Shining Hope. As a quick reminder, just make sure to subscribe and like the video if you want to see further content. But anyways, here we go. So the first card we have here is Gaga Samurai. It's an Earth attribute Warrior Xyz monster. It's a rank 4 with 1900 attack and 1600 defense. It requires 2 level 4 monsters, and the effect is, once per turn, you can detach 1 material from this card, then target 1 Gaga monster you control. It can make a second attack during each battle phase this turn. When another monster you control is targeted for an attack, while this card is in attack position, you can change this card to face up defense position, and if you do, change the attack target to this card, and perform damage calculation. So this card, I think I remember it was used in the final duel between Yuma and Astral, and that was to protect the Barian Emperors from having their world destroyed by Astral and his home world. In that duel, Yuma wasn't able to use the Utopia cards. It was all of Astral who was using them, so he had to come up with various Xyz monsters, including Gaga Samurai, who were non-number monsters, and try and defeat him that way. This card, being able to have a second attack with a Gaga is okay. It's not a bad effect, but you do need a bit of boosting with it. You need some sort of support, either Rising Energy or some sort of equip card. Power of the Guardian is a good example as well, which will help to boost up the stats to make it a viable strategy. The other thing as well is it just makes itself a bit of an attack target. That can be a good thing. If you've got something valuable, at least it means that they're not going to instantly be able to go over that if you need to protect that for the turn. But again, that just makes this a giant target. 1600 defense isn't that big and can actually be one-shotted by, various different level 4 monsters. I mean, even a couple of Gem Knights can do that as well. So the next card we have is number 25, Force Focus. This is a light machine Xyz monster. It's a rank 6 with 2800 attack and 2400 defense. It requires 2 level 6 monsters, and the effect is, once per turn, during either player's turn, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card, then target 1 level 5 or higher effect monster your opponent controls. Negate the effects of that opponent's face-up monster until the end of this turn. I don't really understand why this card is in that pack. Out of all the number monsters, it's not one of those, I would say. First, it's not one of them that appeared immediately within the show. I mean, you had number 30. Before that, you also had Giga Brilliant. You had Illuminite. So you had number 10 as well. You had Big Eye that was in before their Shockmaster. So if you're looking at the whole order of when the numbers came about, you had Freezodon, you had Volcasaurus as well. More examples, Leviathan Dragon. These cards all came out before this one came out in the series. I think the reason they went for this is because it's not particularly what I would say broken. The effect to shut down one of your opponent's higher level monsters for a turn is okay, but you need 2 level 6 to bring this out. So unless you can, I know you can kind of cheat it out with some of the Gagagas who can modify their levels and such. So that's a way of doing it. It's not really that important. It will be easily outshined even now from the various Xyz monsters you have. And more likely than not, you're going to have times where you've got this in your extra deck and will probably never actually use it. The one time you might need it is a time you probably won't be able to get it out in the first place because your opponent is dominating you that hard. Now, Melody the Brass Djinn is quite an interesting card, I think. It's a light attribute Fiend Xyz monster. It's a rank 3 with 1400 attack and 1600 defense. It requires 2 level 3 monsters, and once per turn you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card, then target 1 Djinn Xyz monster you control. It can make a second attack during each battle phase this turn. This works well with, I think it's Muzzle Rhythm, the Stringin. That's actually able to make itself, I think, double attack to 3,000. So it being able to attack twice is a great idea. This was used in the duel by Yuma against Anna Kaboom, who had I think it was the trains. She had the big train deck that, people were at the time very concerned with, very beefy, strong monsters. Like some of them had 4,000 attack points, and you would think, what would these little monsters be able to do? But actually, it turned out that many of these effects actually worked very well together to cut down those monsters to a point where actually how big they originally were was enough to actually take down Anna herself. This is one of the more consistent ones. I mean, it needing only 2 level 3s means it's easy enough to access. You've got things that can modify their levels to change to this, but you will probably have monsters already within your deck that can actually support this strategy anyway. So next is Fujingi Tsukiyomi. It's a light Beast Warrior Xyz monster. It's a rank 4 with 1,800 attack and 2,300 defense. It requires 2 level 4 light monsters, and the effect is once per turn you can attach 1 material from this card, send your entire hand to the graveyard, minimum 1, and if you do, draw 2 cards. When this card you control while face up leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can target level 4 Beast Warrior Bujin monsters in your graveyard up to the number of Xyz materials this card had on the field. Special summon those targets. You can only control 1 Fujingi Tsukiyomi. So this card is part of Fujingi, Bujin archetype. It's one of their Xyz monsters. It was around that kind of time anyway. It was a surprise that they chose to release the Bujins before the Zeal World came up. But, that's their decision. The part of the effect actually helps you to replenish your hand if you've got a very limited hand. If you've got 1 card that's useless, using this effect means you can actually draw into something a bit more consistent. The problem with this card is it does rely on your opponent to actually get rid of this with card effect. Your opponent isn't going to do that if they know anything about this card. Instead, what they'll probably do is they'll probably try and use like a Red Eyes Black Dragon or something just to crash into it and destroy it, especially if they know that you don't have anything in your hand. The Bujins are supported heavily by a lot of their monsters that activate either in the graveyard or in the hand, which means that can be a concern for your opponent, but it's generally not a big issue if you know what they're playing or how they play. If you're able to resolve the effect because your opponent has actually got rid of this, being able to actually bring out another Bujin card means that you can summon something else, and then you can either go into another copy of this or maybe into a different rank monster if that's what you prefer. This card gives you some options there. The Gaga Sister is one of those cards I was mentioning, and that supports the Gaga archetype. It's a dark attribute spellcaster level 2 with 200 attack and 800 defense. When this card is normal summoned, you can add 1 Gaga spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. You can target 1 other Gaga monster you control. The levels of that monster and this card become their combined current levels until the end of this turn. You can only use this effect of Gaga Sister once per turn. So this is one way you can actually cheat out False Focus, which is number 25 if you want. You've got your Gaga Magician on the field already, and then if you summon this, they combine to become both level 6, and then they can go straight into the rank 6 if that's what you want. This being able to search for some of the cards, Gaga Bolt is able to just destroy generically a card on the field so long as you control a Gaga monster. And there are probably other support as well which are coming out further, which will make this card a little bit more powerful, but as of now it's still a mere card. Satilla Knight Altair is a light warrior level 4 with 1,700 attack and 1,300 defense. The effect is if this card is summoned, you can target 1 Satilla Knight monster in your graveyard, except itself, special summon that monster in defense position. Also, monsters you control cannot attack for the rest of this turn, except Tellarknight monsters. You can only use the effect of Satilla Altair once per turn. This card is able to recover one of your Tellarknight monsters from the graveyard, so you might have used it earlier on in the duel, maybe as a cost for an Xyz material to use an effect, or essentially it could have just been gotten rid of by your opponent anyway. This helps you to either go into one of your other Xyz monsters, or even one of your Tellarknights. That way you don't have the whole attack restriction attached to it. It depends on what you're looking for, but this is one of the ways that you're meant to be summoning Deltaros with. So in this we actually have a Light Sworn monster as well. It's Erin, the Light Sworn Monk. It's a light attribute warrior level 4 with 1600 attack and 1000 defense. Its effect is if this card attacks a defense position monster before damage calculation, shuffle that monster into the deck. Once per turn during your end phase, send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. This is good against defensive strategies if your opponent is running things like, I know with certain Blue Eyes decks, what they try and do is they just set and pass. By doing that, you don't really have any information about what they're running, but this would be a way of getting rid of that card without them triggering their effects, either White Stone of Legend, which would search a Blue Eyes from their deck to their hand, or in the case of the Ancient Stone, being able to actually just straight away special summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon to their field. This is a creative strategy to get rid of that kind of problem. Sending the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard isn't an issue. You want to be doing that in a Light Sworn strategy just so you can get your Light Sworn Dragon out, or to be able to recover cards to go into Michael, which is their Synchro monster. But this just helps the strategy in some way. I don't know how many you consider running on. So we have Phosphorous, the Elemental Lord. This is a light attribute fairy level 8 with 2800 attack and 2200 defense. The effect is cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned from your hand by having exactly 5 light monsters in your graveyard. When this card is special summoned, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls. You can only use this effect of Phosphorous, the Elemental Lord, once per turn. If this face-up card leaves the field, you skip the battle phase of your next turn. This is, I think, the last of the Elemental Lords to actually be introduced into the game. They work with the Element Saber monsters who can, when they hit the graveyard, be able to adapt their attributes, so you can meet that condition. This works very well with all of the other Elemental Lords because your aim is to have 5 exactly of those attributes. These attribute manipulation means they can be brought out easier. The ability to just Raigeki your opponent's field is amazing, but it does have the disadvantage alongside a lot of them where if they're gotten rid of from the field, or even certain effects used from the field spell mean that you lose your battle phase anyway. This is kind of one way of not making them too overpowering. Gaga Bolt is a normal spell card with the effect, if you control a Gaga monster, you can target one card on the field and you destroy that target. Again, I've already explained, this is just how that works. It's probably one of the better Gaga cards currently out there, and it's easily searched from that card that I mentioned before. The next card is Satilla Knight Alpha. It's a counter trap card with the effect, when a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated, you can send one face-up Tellarknight monster you control to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do destroy that card, then you draw one card. This is really good for a counter trap because this works on the spell, trap, or monsters, and that's amazing at no real cost to you because you're replacing it with a drawn card. Of course, it means that you're not using something like Solemn Authority, which is costing you thousands of life points, and provides you in, even if it's just to disrupt your opponent slightly, it's enough to sometimes make a bit of a difference to the game state. And the final card to be introduced is Xyz Block. It's a counter trap as well, When your opponent activates a monster effect, you can detach one Xyz material from a monster you control, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that monster. I would say this is quite problematic at the moment, because I know you can go into your Xyz monsters, but if it's your opponent's turn and say it's their first turn, you know they can set up on you, and then this card becomes very much dead. Overall, I consider the super rares to be quite lackluster in the set. Generally, my favourite out of that is probably the Elemental Lord and Melody the Brass Djinn. I think you can get Melody as well anyway by levelling up Yuma within the game, so you don't actually have to get it through this route. The other cards I don't actually see that beneficial as of yet. Until we get more support, I don't consider many of them to be at all viable. Whatever you think, leave your comments down below, like the video, and please make sure to subscribe.